Hello everyone and welcome back to the JP on Comms YouTube channel for another potential signings video. In the last one, if you haven't seen it already, I will link it somewhere around the top of the screen, but we did take a look at potential forward signings that Maidstone could be bringing into the club going forward into the 2023/24 season. Now, of course, returning back to the National League South, that is going to open us up to a different type of player. We are going to be looking at people who aren't necessarily completely cemented in where they are in their career, maybe some transitional players and some players who are looking to prove themselves in a better side, potentially in a National League South. So, of course, in this video, we are going to be taking a look at some midfielders, and to kick things off, we're going to be getting into someone who can play in a more advanced attacking midfield position, but can also play in that centre forward role. Now, Addy Aziz is the player that I'm talking about, and of course, many of you, if you are a Maidstone fan watching this video, or a National League South fan, something like that, then you may well be aware of Addy Aziz. Well, who is Addy Aziz? Well, he's a 29-year-old player. He is 6 foot tall roughly, and like I say, he can play in that centre forward role, can play on the left, can play on the right, and he can play in that attacking midfield spot. Now, he is not getting any younger. That is not a dig, of course. Many people will know that is something I say quite a lot, just to try and get home the point that I'm about to make. He is not necessarily going to fit into George Elokobi's current philosophy of signings. It seems that George Elokobi's, of course, taking a look at those more younger players, those more transitional developmental players in sides, and of course, for me at least, I feel it's very important to still have that experience within the squad. If you look at Maidstone's team now, I mean, I'm assuming players like James Alabi and Regan Booty and even Luke, of course, are going to be going during this summer transfer period. So we are going to be losing a lot of experience around the team, and that is going to leave us a little bit light in that central position and in those midfield areas, in terms of, people who've accrued a lot of games. And Addy Aziz is someone who's done just that. He's someone who I feel would bring a lot of experience to the team, whether he's deployed in a forward position or in a midfield position, that slightly attacking position. I do think that he's someone who could benefit this Maidstone team for that. Last season, or well, in this current season at least, he has got 14 goals in 40 games at the time of recording, which of course is very impressive for the position he does play. He plays a bit more of a utility role. Like I say, he can play in a number of different positions around the pitch, so I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing at all. We always want to have cover in different areas of the field, and I think if he's someone that could come in and provide that to us, then why not look at signing him? And I mean, he's currently at Welling in the National League South. Of course, if you're not aware, Cody Lyons-Foster, who we did have on loan at points this season, Christy Patterson, of course, everyone will know who that is if you're a Maidstone fan, both do play for Welling as well. Potential there to put a good word in. You never know. You never know how it might end up. So he's someone I think, looking at him, his experience, his background could be quite important in bringing in. What is it about him in particular, his playing style, that I believe he could contribute to this side? Well, he's a very technical player, someone with a lot of skill, someone who is very hard work, very versatile, as I've already mentioned, and someone who I believe that is very profitable in that 6-yard box. I mean, there's been a lot of times in this season where balls have gone into the box and we've not had anyone there to pick them up. And coming off the back of his best league goal scoring season of his career last season, he's only gone and bettered that this season. He got 11 goals in the league last year, 14 so far in this season. And having looked back at some clips and things of him, it's really that movement which is earning him a lot of his goals. His technicality as well does come into it, but for me, I believe he's someone we should be taking a look at in bringing in if we're going to go for someone who's a bit more of an experienced head. Now, of course, going on to the next player, we are going to be actually talking about some proper central midfielders this time, and the player that I've picked out is Devonte Aaron Sibia. Now, this is a name who I've recently come across having a look through some statistics, key statistics about the National League South, and of course looking around at what potential links people at the club may have to people in other teams. And Jay Saunders, of course, is the manager of Tunbridge Angels. If you watched my previous video, you would have seen Jordan Greenwich featured in that one. And of course, I did bring up the fact that Jay Saunders is there. Very likely there's still a decent connection with Jay in terms of some people at the club, maybe not necessarily everybody and Jay, but For me, Aaron Sibia is a very good player. Of course, if we were to get Greenwich and Aaron Sibia off of Tunbridge, I'm sure they wouldn't be too pleased with that. But what is it about Aaron Sibia that I've highlighted? Well, he's a left-footed player. A left-footed player, of course, we're probably going to lose in Regan Booty. So that means in the midfield, we're not going to have anybody who is predominantly left-footed. Bhavesh Gurung, Dom Adesanya, Sam Corn, you name it, Henry Woods. I believe they're all right-footed players. So we're going to be adding a different option if we were to bring in Aaron Sibia into this midfield with that left-footed player. Now, at 24 years of age, he's someone who is starting to find his feet, and he's starting to cement his playing style in games a lot more. In this Tunbridge Angels side, he's managed 10 goals in the National League South this season. So from a midfield position, that's pretty impressive. He's, of course, seemingly a goal-scoring central midfielder. In his career up to this point, he's played about 98 games. He's got 20 goals in that time as well. Now, a 1-5 output for a midfielder, a central midfielder, is not bad at all. If you were to average that out across maybe a 45, 46 game period, that's of course going to land him about 9 goals a season. So, I mean, he's just overperforming that now. I think he looks really, really good. He reminds me a lot of Sam Corn from what we saw last season, those driving runs towards the edge of the box, picking up those stray balls and managing to finish quite succinctly. Now, of course, if we do manage to keep Sam Corn, we do have to be wary of potential, re-aggravation of injuries, that sort of thing. So I think being able to rotate players like Corn and Aaron Sibia in those midfield positions whilst he gets back to, full fitness, and we're confident in his ability to continue playing for us next season, I think, that's a very good thing. In some of the clips I watched, Aaron Sibia was actually stretchered off not too long ago, back in February against Concord, and it didn't look great. And then 2 days later, he came and played a full 90 minutes. So, maybe that is a good thing. I don't know his injury history. Unfortunately, that sort of stuff is quite hard to find at this level, but that for me is a good sign. Someone who is still fit, still able to continue after taking some pretty heavy knocks, and that's a good thing for me. So, talking about his style of play, he's a very progressive player, someone who is looking to move the ball forward at all times, and he also drifts out to the wide positions quite a lot. He's someone who uses that left foot to drift from those central positions out to the left-hand side, whip balls in, cut in, get those balls across to the centre of the box. If someone else is filling the position he usually takes up on the edge. And again, he's another player who's pretty technical as well. I mean, there was a few times where he's under pressure in that midfield and he might knock the ball to the side of him and just flick it around a player, go the other way, and off he goes. He's gone. So I really like that about him. He's very quick, tenacious, and someone who I think could add a lot going forward in this team. I did, although, highlight a couple of things about him which we may have to have a little look at, may have to develop a little bit more coming to this side. And for me, some of his weaknesses did remind me of that of Dom Adesanya. I mean, Dom Adesanya is a very good player, someone who I'd like to keep for next season. Someone who can move forward really, really well, got great ability to hit from range, got good little passing range, technicality as well is a strong point of Dom's. Aaron Sibia checks a lot of those boxes too, but he also checks a couple of boxes defensively, which do concern me. And I think he's a little bit weak in the challenge sometimes. I think that's something that you'll see of a lot of players who play in a more attacking role. That's clearly not his main job at Tunbridge Angels, that kind of breaking up the play and that sort of thing. He can be pretty good at a high press in those kind of attacking roles that he finds himself in. But in terms of defending on the edge of the box, sometimes he can get brushed past a little bit too easily. So that's something I'll keep an eye out for him. But of course, we've got to highlight these things if we were to look at players anyway. We can't just assume everybody's going to be this wonderfully perfect player that we could bring in. So we've now taken a look, of course, at someone who plays in a much more advanced position role, even a centre-forward role in Addy Aziz. We've taken a look at Devontae Aaron Sibia, someone who plays in a more central, slightly attacking position as well, can drift out onto that left-hand side too. Now we're going to take a look at someone who is a much more defensive player, Taylor Maloney of Welling, about 5'9" tall, 24 years old. He is an ex-captain of the Charlton under-23s, I do believe, as well. And what is it I've seen in Taylor Maloney that I think would really benefit this side? Well, I think everybody can agree that after Michael Phillips actually left the side last season, tail end of last season, and went to Barnet, we have been lacking in that central defensive position. I know Regan Booty's picked up a lot of times this season. Sam Bone is someone who has found himself in and amongst that defensive midfield role too. But for me, we need that consistency. We need a specialist defensive midfielder, someone who is deployed there in 99% of their games, not chopping and changing around the side, not forcing themselves into a different style of play. And Taylor Maloney is that guy for me. In 32 games this season, he's managed to accrue 9 goals. Now that is simply fantastic, playing in a very deep midfield position. And a lot of his goals are coming from outside the box too. He really has got a great ability to hit a ball from distance, and he's a bit of a set piece specialist too. He's got a couple of penalties to his name. He's fantastic at corners and free kicks too. His delivery looks sensational to me. The amount of times he gets a good ball into the box, and the likes of Addy Aziz are getting on the end of it. That's exactly what we need in this Maidstone team, especially if we are going to lose Regan Booty. We're almost getting a 2-for-1 role here in Taylor Maloney, someone who is able to hit those dead balls, play those long passes, those cutting line passes too, and he's going to be a defensive specialist, so he's going to be in there breaking up the play, chopping up attacks and all sorts. So that is something I really like the look of. And for Welling as well, he has managed to pick up 3 Player of the Month awards this season: January, December and August so far in this season. Of course, more than likely going to be a candidate for their Player of the Season too. And something I really want to highlight is the importance of a player like this on a team. Now, of course, we all understand the importance of people in that role, but just to bring some statistics and numbers into this game too, I did actually look at the percentages of wins, losses and draws when Maloney is featuring in the side for Welling and when he's not. And in 32 games which he has featured in for Welling this season, they have won 11, drawn 11, lost 10. Very even across the board there. 34.4% wins and draws, and then 31.25% or thereabouts for the losses. When he's not featuring in the side, they've played 11 games without Taylor Maloney in this season so far. They've won 1. They've won 1 out of 11 without Taylor Maloney this season. They've drawn 6 and lost 4. So that is a 9% roughly win ratio, a 54.5% draw percentage, and a 36.4 loss percentage. So they are certainly much worse off without someone as influential as Taylor Maloney in the team. And for me, that is exactly what I like to see. From the clips that I watched, you can see that he was certainly the ex-captain of that under-23s Charlton team. I mean, he's incredibly commanding. He's someone who is liking to organise his team around him. He gets everybody in an advantageous position to himself, but also the team. And that is something which is very good. Of course, if he's commanding the ball into himself, he's going to want people organised in positions that he'll be able to offload the ball and, help him to receive the ball too. He's someone who I really like the look of. I think could be a fantastic addition to this Maidstone team. It would not surprise me if he found himself a National League outfit next season. Not at all. He's a very good player, and we'd be very lucky to pick him up in my opinion. So on to the last player now. The last player that I have highlighted for this video was actually suggested to me by someone from the channel, Connor. Connor, of course, you will be familiar with if you watch the podcast. Never featured on one, but always that little background mention. And the player he did bring up to me is Shilo Remy. Now, how much Connor's seen of him, I'm not sure. I was just given a name, and that was what I took to go and research. And Shilo Remy is someone who I'm very glad was brought up to me. 22 years of age, he's of English and St. Lucian background. Of course, that doesn't really matter, but some people like to know those things. And he's a central midfield player. So, currently playing at Eastbourne Borough, 43 games in the National League South so far this season, 13 goals to his name as well. So we're looking at a lot of high scoring midfielders in this video here. Of course, playing in a couple of different roles from what we've seen in players in this video already. And again, Shilo Remy, from what I've seen from him, is someone who is a very exciting prospect. Very young still, of course, and playing for an Eastbourne side who's doing pretty well in the National League South. And he is certainly one of the more influential players in the team. He's not always featuring, but when he does, he is someone who is on the ball a lot of the time. Very quick indeed. very, very technical indeed, someone who's got quite a low centre of gravity, someone who is able to beat a man on the dribble. I mean, there's been times in videos where I've seen him just skip past two players in a sort of left back position. Something he likes to do is drift out to the right hand side quite a lot too, I've noticed that. And he's very much two-footed, I have noticed. Originally I thought, because he keeps drifting out to the right, he's someone who's going to be just whipping those balls in on his right foot, and he's got a very good delivery too. But he's got a great ability to pass direct on his left foot as well. A lot of assists I saw him picking up were from either foot, and it's always good to have a player with that adaptability in a side. I mean, I've watched videos from ex-pros before who have spoken about the importance of being able to use both feet, and it helps so much in unpredictability, especially if you're on those tight midfield positions like Shilo Remy finds himself in at times. If you're receiving the ball with your back to a player, if you're right-footed, they're going to expect you to only go one way most of the time. Whereas if you've got 2 feet, then, that you're able to use quite confidently, they're not really going to be sure on where you're going to end up. And that provides a good dynamic, especially at this level of unpredictability. And that, of course, becomes very, very profitable at this level. So he's someone I'd like to bring in. Of course, you look at the consistency of players. That's something we need to really, really bring home. We've had a lot of players this season who have struggled at times with getting game time. Shilo Remy is someone who's not done that. As I said, 43 games. He does feature off the bench sometimes, but he has, of course, featured quite a lot recently. At the start of the season, he only played one full 90 in the first 9 games. In the last 9 games of this season, he's played a full 97 times. So he's really picked up that consistency. He's really getting involved in games quite a lot, especially in this National League South Division, which, of course, if he knows already, would be good experience to bring in, despite his young age. And one last thing I want to mention as well is, again, going back to Jordan Greenwich from last time, he does play on a 3G pitch. Now, if you're playing 43 games a season, you're featuring very regularly, very consistently, and performing well on an artificial surface. That's someone who I would quite like to see come in. Of course, as I mentioned last time, if you haven't seen it, we have got a few players in the side who do struggle with the artificial surface. But if you're bringing in people who are suited to it, they're familiar with it, then, that also could benefit us too. Worth mentioning maybe just one more thing with Shilo Remy is that he does actually play in the same side as Lee Worgan. So, of course, Lee may well be able to put a good word in for us. If we were to come a call in for Shilo Remy, of course, he'll likely know about Lee's background in the club and may go to him for advice on whether it'd be a good move or not. And hopefully, of course, as treasured as Lee Worgan is, he's someone who would, of course, support this club where possible, even if that means losing a very good teammate of his. So that is going to be all the players in this video. 4 more players who Maidstone could look to bring in, this time in the more central positions of the field. And of course, we are going to be doing another video in about a week's time, looking at those in the more defensive positions. Of course, we are going to need to strengthen there, considering the current situation in the club. 100 league goals officially conceded this season, so we're going to have to make some changes, I feel. So do stay tuned to the channel if you do want to see that video in about a week's time. Do subscribe as well. We're so close. I think we're 1 away from 150 at the time of this recording. So it'd be lovely to hit that. And of course, start climbing towards 200, 250, 300. Hopefully we can keep growing together as a channel. Of course, it is your impacts on this channel that make all the difference for me. So do leave your comments down below on your thoughts on the players in this video. And of course, if you've got any suggestions of players you'd like me to look at as well, they don't necessarily have to be defenders, because I'd like to put together another video a little bit later on, maybe towards the summertime, of just a collection of players who've been highlighted by people like yourselves watching this video. So do leave a like, do comment down below, and do subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next one.